Welcome back to the channel, guys. In today's video I'm going to show you how to build a deck. And if you look here behind me, we got a 24-foot wide by 12-foot long deck going in this space. So if you have not built a deck before, you're going to learn something today. So the first thing we got to do is put a ledger board against the side of the house here. So let's get started. So right here is where we're going to be placing the ledger board against this band boards. But before you do that, you must first install flashing. In this case, it's vinyl flashing, because if you use aluminum flashing here, it will rot out, because that aluminum flashing up against pressure treated lumber will cause a chemical reaction, and that aluminum flashing will just be wiped out in just a handful of years. So use vinyl, and you want to make sure you're using enough vinyl that's wide enough to go 2 inches below and 2 inches above your ledger board. So for instance, we're using a 2x10, it's going to go from here to about here. So this is 14 inches, which is 2 inches above and below the 2x10 ledger board. So to install this stuff, it's pretty simple. What you need to do first is go ahead and open it up. And you want to use aluminum nails. I just use regular siding nails or roofing nails. So just little 1.25 inch nails. So first, go ahead and line it up where you need it. So we know we need to go to at least the bottom of that sill plate. So right there looks pretty good. All right, and then I'll just tack a nail back in this corner to hold it for now. So just stretch it out. Like I said, here's the sill plate. I like to try to get below the sill plate just a little bit. Okay, so something like that. And then I'm just going to tack another nail and run this clear across this width of the house. Okay guys, as you can see here, I got the flashing all the way around. Anywhere where a board's going to be hitting the band board and going to be a ledger board is where I put the flashing. So that's what you got to do in order to keep everything watertight. So now it's time to install the ledger board. Okay, so I'm going to be using this 2x10 as the ledger board, and I know the thickness of my Trex that I'm going to be using is 1 inch. So I go ahead and pull down because I want the top of the Trex flush with the top of this plywood, so that way it's just an even transition from the inside of the house to the outside. So I pull down, make a mark at 1 inch, and then come over here. I'm going to make a mark at 1 inch. All right, and if you don't have a door opening that you're trying to get it at the right elevation, which typically you would going out to a deck, obviously, but if you didn't want to go off the door opening, you can clearly come up with whatever elevation you want. So if you just wanted to step down, 3 or 4 inches, you could do that too. So it's whatever you prefer, really. But all right, so what I'm going to do is go ahead and get this lined up to these 1 inch marks I have below this opening. And I'm going to use galvanized 12-penny nails. These are 3 inches long, just enough to tack this ledger board up there before I put the lag bolts in it. All right, so since I work by myself a lot, I just put a little prop here to hold it about the height I need. And now over here, I'm going to go ahead and get this tacked where it goes. All right, I'm going to double check, make sure I'm 1 inch. Yep, that looks really good. And now since that side's held where I need it, I'm going to go ahead and start a nail over here. All right, now we got this nailed where we need it. We got a 1 inch drop from here to here. And that way, like I said, once track goes on, we're going to be flush with that opening. And now what I need to do, I'm going to go ahead, take a level and level that ledger board as I go across. I first got to cut this ledger board to length. I'm going to go ahead and put up some props to hold this up. And you always crown this stuff up. So anything you do, you always crown up. This one's almost perfectly straight. Now that I'm flush with the top of the first ledger board, I'm going to go ahead and put my 4-foot level on this one. And let's see here, it shows it's too high. So I just have blocks sitting on the dirt. I'm just going to peck that down we're setting nice and level. And after you level the first one, the rest of it should be pretty dang close. So that looks good. So this board behind me is against a masonry surface, and in order to anchor it to that, you need a hammer drill and an impact driver. And I'm just using these 3.5-inch Tapcons. They're about 50 cents a piece, but I need to run about, I don't know, 10 of them in there or so, just enough to keep it solid against the house. The other side is right against wood, so you can just use regular screws for that. These are not actually ledger boards on these sides. They're just the sides going to hold the edge of the tracks going across. And I'll get out here so you can see just about 2 inches down. And then you take your impact driver and you'll draw that board really tight against the house. And if you're wondering why there's flashing, even though it's just against block and concrete, it's because right here it's flush with the bottom of this wall. So you still want water to go here and down instead of here and then back behind that wall. So always flash it no matter what. So before we put the lag bolts into this ledger board, we must first put on our brackets, or at least lay them out to where they're going to go. When I say brackets, I mean the joist hangers for your joists that's going to be for your deck. So in order to find out exactly where you need to put them, when you're using Trex and you're going to have breaks, you need to have a double joist that's going to break on the edge of the Trex. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So right here's the center. So we know we're going to have 2 of them right here. And all you got to do, you don't actually use 2 of them, you use 1 floor joist and then just scab a 2x4 on the side of it to catch the break of the Trex. And I'll show you how to do that. So we know we're going to the center here, and then I just put the center of that Trex and then mark the edges to where we're going to have another break there, and then there's going to be a break here. So we're going to have a floor joist with a scab piece on the side, on each end, and right in the middle. And once you see it built, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So we do that, lay it out, and then we're going to see exactly where we're going to have our joist hangers, and then that's where we're going to put our lag bolts in between them. So I'll go ahead and show you that, but I want to show you how you lay these out first. Now that we know where our floor joists are going to be heading against the ledger board, now we just need to put a bolt in between every other opening space. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now because it's easier to do it now than after you have all your joists in the way. So I got a 3/4 inch bit. I got my bolt that I'm going to be using, lag bolt. This is a 1/2 inch lag bolt, 4 inches long, because it needs to go through the band board and the ledger board and stick out from the inside so the inspector can see there's long enough bolts in. And I'm just going to be using a 3/8 drill bit for those 1/2 inch bolts. If we're going to be putting a bolt right here, we're going to go ahead and drill it out with our 3/8 bit. Okay, and now we're going to take our impact driver and go ahead and drive it into the ledger board, into the band board. All right, you heard it bog down there. It's drove in very nicely. And always use a washer with the lag bolts because it won't grab well as far as holding pressure goes. So you want to make sure you have that. And now what I like to do, so if it goes in between each joist, our next joist is here. So we skip this space and go over to this space next. And it's in a, since this one was low on the ledger board, the next one's going to be high. So let's go ahead and get a close-up of this one. All right, so we stay about 2 inches down from the top here. And there's a layout for a joist here and a layout for a joist there, so it's right between them. Now you slide your bolt through your washer, place it into the hole, take your impact. Voila, there's another bolt fastened nicely. So right here where these 2 boards are butting up against each other, I always put 2, one here, one there, one here, one there at the end of each board. And then in the fields, like I said, I do that W pattern. right, so there you have it. We got the ledger board installed, and we got bolts every 2 foot going across and 2 at the end of each board. And then this board on the side, I put bolts in it too, which this isn't really a ledger board. Neither is this one over here. They're just attached to the sides of the house as a place for your decking to set on. So in order to get the height of this post and this post, all I did was hooked a string line from the top of this board at the end of it to the top of this board at the end of it. And as you can see, our string line is sitting right on top of that post. I already cut the post earlier, so that way we already have it ready to go. But now we just got to notch out for a place to set the beam on top of the post. Okay, so how you notch this out is pretty straightforward. We know our beam is out of a 2x10, so we measure down 9 1/4 because that's the thickness of our 2x10 or the width of it. And we went and made a mark, and then I'll make a square line right there at the 9 1/4, turn it on its side. The beam is going to be 2 2x10s, so we need to make it 3 inches deep. So we come over here, make a line over to 3 inches, make it a little heavy to give you some room to play. And then you scribe your line. All right, so now we know this needs cut out. And come over here on this side, do the same thing. All right, and that comes out. So now you just take your saw and cut that out this way, then run it down the sides, and then take your Sawzall to finish it off. Voila! And now it gives you a place to set your beam right here to rest on perfectly. All right, we're going to go ahead and start building this beam going across. And I'm going to grab a 16-footer. It's going to butt into this board that we put the string line on. It's going to stop and split right in the middle of that post down that second one down that you see. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and nail this where it belongs over here. See how level this is setting. Wow, without any adjusting, it is perfect. That never happens. Don't get used to that happening. That never happens. So now I'm going to go ahead and make sure that one's spaced properly, and then I'm going to anchor the one down below. When you put these nails in, make sure you offset them a little bit, so when you put your main bolt through later, it's not setting where you want your other bolt to be hitting. Okay, so this was the first ply that we just put on, and I went ahead and just took a second piece of 2x10 and made another ply. So if you look here, you want to stagger your joints. So if the break was here, this was the 8-footer going towards the end here. Now this one's a 16-footer on the outside, and it runs clear over here. And now the break's here, and then it's solid behind it. So that's how you make a header. And now what I did after that, I went ahead, if you take a note at this string line right here, all it is a piece of 2x4, then put a nail in it to hold it and give you a place to put your string line on. Pull it really tight. And as you can see here, we got 1.5 inches heavy. Then you come to your post and measure, and we got the same thing, 1.5 inches heavy. And your next post, the same thing, 1.5 inches heavy. So that's how you get your post and your beams to line up properly. And make sure you always use a string line, because that's how you get it perfect. Don't ever just eyeball it, because that never works out good. So now the next thing we got to do is nail off this beam just like you would the inside of a house beam. You just do the W pattern going across on the outside. And then I don't know if I really want that W pattern from the outside visible. So I'm just going to take decking screws and screw them down in straight lines across the front. All right, so on this side, I'm going to do the W pattern like I said till I get to the end, and then I'm going to do straight lines up front on the face side. And when I say straight lines, I'm just going to nail them up and down so it looks nice and uniform. All right, if you look up close here, I got this nailed off on this side. And then what I ended up doing on this side is every 2 foot, I just put 3 of these 4-inch screws, and as you can see, they're definitely too long. They poke through the other side, but they're going to serve their purpose. So that squeezed that together nice and tight, and I did that clear across the whole thing, and we still maintained our 1.5 inches between the string line and the beam. So that's all I'm going to get done here today. All right guys, that wraps it up for the day. So I showed you how to do a ledger board and do a beam and post. I hope that was helpful. If you're new to this channel, my name's Josh. This channel is all about building your own house, saving a ton of money. So be sure to subscribe and smash that like button if you found value in this video. So come back tomorrow because I'm going to be doing these joists and you don't want to miss out on that. All right, see ya. Peace.